formula in the NBA. No great team has ever done it with one guy or two guys. They've always had 3, 4, 5 guys. The new thing with San Antonio is not a big new thing. It's, what's always been. But the Cleveland Cavaliers have to figure out what guys are best going to serve them and get their defensive intensity together, and I think they'll be all right. And I think that'll happen probably, if it happens this season, toward the end of the season, after the All-Star break, when they find out that they've been disappointing to a lot of different people. When the glow of LeBron's back wears off, then they'll probably get to work.
Tell you what, you mentioned about Tristan. That's why I thought he's a good fit for this team, because he doesn't need the ball offensively, want the ball. He's willing to play rebounds and defense and the hustle stuff that you need. You definitely got to have some guys like that. And with Kyrie, that's why I always thought he was a 2-guard, man, disguised as a point guard because of his style of play. And I know some people try to tell you, well, that's the modern NBA point guard. I disagree, because I'm with you with what you said, where I'm at with that. I'm like, man, there's no reason that the guy can't average double-digit assists with this team around him. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, yeah.
And still score.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm with you there, man, because the offense is there. I could hear you before when you said, well, look at who he had around him. I get it. The Cavs weren't very deep offensively over the last few years. But look to your left and right now. You got guys to pass the ball to, and there's no reason that you should not really flourish as a point guard here. So he's going to have to evolve that part of his game, or max deal or not. I mean, he won't be a long-term part of this thing, because the Cavs will keep moving pieces around. And as we know, no matter who likes it or not, the alpha at the top of it is LeBron James, not Kyrie Irving.
Right, without a doubt. But last night's game was a great game for fans of basketball.
Love
if
the
you're a fan of
Spurs,
the Cleveland Cavaliers, you can't be happy about it, though. I mean, they lost. That's the bottom line.
Love the Spurs, though. I really do. Just you could see in the moments, like you said, those key moments of the game. All the Spurs do is say, hey, we're good. They just play their game, and at the end, those little key moments, they outplay you, and they come away with it, and they realize at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they win by 50 or they win by 2. That's all they have to do is get out of there. But that was a good game, and you could see not just later this season when people are fast forwarding through their future, but down the road. That's obviously what you aim to be as a franchise, but they didn't get where they are, not even in years. It took 15 years to be the Spurs as they've been over the last decade and a half. So that's something to aim for, but it's not something that you get to tomorrow. It takes a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work. It takes the attitude of the front office, of the coach, the types of players they bring in. All of those guys fit a mold. Those guys fit what they're trying to do, not the other way around. They just don't take talent because it's talent. They take talent that does specific things that they want to play, that they have to play and they want to play like, and that's what they do. So I do believe that, if that's what they're shooting for, we'll see. We'll see what kinds of players they get. We'll see if the coach matures to the level of a Greg Popovich, which I doubt, but he could. But the thing is, the Cleveland Cavaliers, first of all, have to play better defense. If they do that, then they'll be in the mix to be one of the best teams in the NBA this year and going forward.
And perfect segue, talking about players that fit on teams and all of that. Let's switch over to the Browns. We've been right on the verge of talking about this, just not necessarily thinking this week, but thinking more this offseason. Ben Tate talks his way right out of Cleveland here this past week. Ends up in Minnesota now, signed on waivers by the Vikings. But what were your thoughts? Probably not too surprised. We all saw the writing on the wall as far as where this was going with Weston Crowell and Ben Tate.
Yeah, I think it was more about those young backs than it was about Ben Tate. Ben Tate's a good back. Ben Tate's a back that could carry the load. Ben Tate's a back that could gain you 1,000 yards. Nothing about Ben Tate the previous 5 years, when we looked at him in Houston, tells us otherwise. I think what it was, though, was the combination of those young backs and Tate's dissatisfaction, disfranchisement with his role on this football team. As long as he was the top dog, everything was cool. And I seen the sense. I remember back when they signed Tate, they were in like the mini camp mode. And after they had signed Ben Tate, they had a mini camp. And there was you may even remember this, there was a story that Ben Tate said he doesn't care who they draft, he's the number one guy. So when I heard that way back in May, way back in, after the draft, I said to myself, that's a problem. Because if you have to announce that you're the number one guy, then you aren't the number one guy. But here's the other thing. On draft day, when they took Terrence West, and then they got Isaiah Crowell, and those who know me, those who follow me on the draft, they know I was crying for Isaiah Crowell from the time last football season ended. I've been on Isaiah Crowell since he first ran the ball at Georgia. And so from the moment they signed him as a preferred free agent, and the moment they drafted Terrence West, I knew there was going to be a problem because those kids can play. They have different styles, but they can play. And so it all conspired to make Ben Tate more disenfranchised than ever before, so much so that he came out last week and had a problem with the rotation, or 2-3 weeks ago. I said in a podcast at that time, keep your eye on the Ben Tate situation. There was no Ben Tate situation. Everybody was saying, what are you talking about? And now we see what I was talking about. And I've seen this many times in the NFL where guys become disenfranchised because of the competition behind them. So he says, undoubtedly, I don't care what they got, I'm the number one guy. That tells me he was worried from the day one that he signed with the Cleveland Browns.
Well, he knew,
because he knew that he couldn't beat those young guys off. So, like you said, I am somewhat, I knew this was going to happen. I'm not shocked. I'm not amazed. I really don't care because Tate didn't fit. Ultimately, Isaiah Crowell needed to tote the rock, and so does Terrence West. Now, those two young guys have to get their handle on the ball. They got to hold on to the ball. They can't be fumbling the rock. They can't be putting it on the ground because they, too, can be replaced. But I see this as a logical outcropping of talent on the team, and that's what you want, really. You want guys that you draft, that you bring in, that's never played for anybody, to supplant somebody that's already there, proclaiming they're the number one. You want the guys you draft in late rounds or as preferred free agents, streak free agents. You want those guys to come in, reshape your roster by their talent, hard work, and good play. And that's what Crowell and Terrence West have done.
Yep, and as we've talked about, Mike Pettin, I give him credit. He's been a straight shooter. When he was pressed on it, he basically said it wasn't so much West. He said, we knew him. We were drafting him. It was the emergence of Crowell when we said, okay, wait a minute here and now. And it's that where you say the old phrase, we've got a good problem because we've got too much of something. And that was really what did it in. But what you said, I was joking earlier this week when he was released. I said, remember back in training camp when he said, now I'm not worried about those two young guys? I said, well, should have been worried about those two young guys because they were definitely worried about you, and they went out there and did what they did. But that was it. It's much like the Hoyer Manziel situation, regardless of what you think of who's going to do what in the future. I just mean having two different plans. Okay, we're going to go this way, and we're going to see how this develops at the same time, and if they both end up being good, then we'll deal with that when we get there. The Browns weren't sure where things were going with Hoyer, much like the same thing. They didn't see that developing when they signed Tate. Tate came first, and then the draft, and then the Crow came through, but we all knew when they got him undrafted. I mean, he was the freshman of the year. You knew where he was going to go. He obviously, it was off-field stuff with him that cost him where he was at. So there it is. And now you know what, Ben Tate, I thought the Browns also did him a bit, I don't want to say a favor, but I thought they did right by him by letting him go now because there were several teams that needed feature backs like now. Minnesota, Indianapolis, a backup situation in Pittsburgh. Why be unhappy here and ruin the team? Go out there and get you another job. So they let him go do it.
Yeah, but here's what I hate. J-Rock. I hate how Cleveland's media has painted Ben Tate as a bad guy. Ben Tate is not a bad
His
guy.
situation changed, you know?
Yeah, but things changed, but Ben Tate is a guy who was happy in a starting role. He didn't come here to be a part of a rotation. He came here to be the feature back. And if you were hired to do something, and then somebody else was hired after you, and you didn't view them as being as capable as you, you'd be unhappy too, no matter who you are. So I just believe that Cleveland media, they're such sycophants, such fans, such followers, all of them, the TV guys, some of the writers. It's just pathetic that they now are painting Ben Tate as a bad guy. Whoa, he was just infecting the locker room. He's such a bad guy and blah, blah, blah. Listen, guys, he was disenchanted with being a bench warmer or a bit player or a platoon player, as he should have been. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have talked to the media. I wouldn't recommend that, because the media is in the same position, by and large. Most of the guys around here who do radio are fans. If they do sports talk, you better believe they're fans. I don't care what station, what time of day, they're fans, with very few exceptions. They will not tell you the truth about the team because their fandom comes first. That's a problem. When you cover these teams and you're a fan and you can't leave your fan hat at home and put on your big boy media cap, that says to me you're not a pro, you're not honest, and you're a fan. Let fans be where fans are. They need to be in the stands, not representing what is real on radio or television, because they can't tell you the real. They won't, because the teams have too much influence or sway over them. I've been in radio a long time, and I've called shots on people. They've called my general manager, my program director, and said, well, Kendall said this or Kendall said that. You know why? Because Kendall's not a fan first. I'm a broadcaster first, a professional broadcaster. And you have a lot of that on social media. Guys blog, guys do podcasts, and they're fans first. That's cool. But they shouldn't be trying to be legitimate broadcasters, because they don't have the training. They don't have the outlook. They don't have the talent. They don't have the experience to say, well, look, the team stinks, and I'm going to tell you why they stink, and stand by that. Have courage. This whole Ben Tate thing opens up a new wound for me, and that is, you're a broadcaster, or you fancy yourself as a broadcaster, but yet you look like a fan. You sound like a fan. Man, be a broadcaster. Tell the people the truth, and let them decide what's real and who's bad guy. And really, to be honest, it doesn't matter that he was a bad guy. The Browns and themselves know who's bad and who's not, and they get rid of him. Okay, fine. But don't come telling me, well, he's a bad guy because he wanted to play, because that's so far from the truth, it's ridiculous.
Kendall Lewis, the BSK, going to town. I love it. You're listening to the Sports Fix, J-Rock, Kendall Lewis. We're talking a little Browns, and let's segue that. Let's talk some truth. Talk about the Browns. Obviously, J.J. Watt made all kinds of impacts on the Browns the other day, and they fell to Houston. Now here they sit this week. A lot of talk. We've already mentioned Josh Gordon coming back. He's back in practice, all of that stuff. But you're going on the road to the Dome, Atlanta. Very similar, actually, to going on the road when Josh Gordon came back last year. And everybody points to that. But I'm like, yeah, this isn't Minnesota. But Atlanta does have some issues with the pass defense back there. What do you think, man? Browns, can they focus? They've done it. Here's what I've said this week. This is the one thing I like, is they've done a good job, the coaching staff, of bouncing back from flat performances and having the team ready to come out and play the next week. So I'm hoping that that trend continues and that they come out ready to play in Atlanta. Where are you at this week?
Well, after they beat Cincinnati on the road on a couple of Thursday nights ago, I said to myself right then, they can beat anybody, all right? Anybody, anywhere, anytime, all right? We know that. That's not the problem. The problem isn't can they. The problem is will they. The problem is, are things going in their minds, the team's mind, well enough so that they can focus. And we know things aren't going well right now because of injuries, attrition. Ben Tate, injuries to